Michael Stephens joins me now on the set. He is a researcher at the Royal United Services Institute, a British think tank based in London. Thanks very much for coming in here to the studio once again. The vote is expected to be given the green light by the UN. Do you see it as largely symbolic, or will it really help the Palestinians?
Yeah, I think it is largely symbolic. It's a good show of support for sort of some movement forward on the diplomatic initiative on the Palestinian question, but I think negotiations have been stalled now for the best part of sort of 24 months, and the same issues are coming up time and time again on the sticking points between the Israeli side and the Palestinian side. Settlement construction is still going on. The Palestinians can't go to the negotiating table, they feel, until that stops. So, you know, we can talk about what's going on in New York, but there are constructions going on in the West Bank, and that's not going to stop tomorrow because there was a vote in the UN General Assembly. The economy of the West Bank is very fragile right now, and again, you know, that's not going to be solved particularly by negotiating observer status in the UN. So there are some real facts on the ground that need to be looked at hard as well. And the Israelis have been keen to point out actually that they've been trying to sort of build up the Palestinian economy as a way to give stability in the Palestinian sort of West Bank area, and that they can then go into negotiations with the Palestinians that way. So really there's a number of different factors at play, and this is just one of those factors. It's not the main factor that will kickstart negotiations.
Do you see the Israelis retaliating if the vote goes ahead?
Well, the Israelis have made their position quite clear. They've said that they will not overreact if the Palestinians don't use this to press forward on a number of fronts. So let's say, for example, the International Criminal
ICC,
Court.
Yeah,
if the Palestinians do that, there will be a strong reaction from the Israelis. If they don't do that, then the Israelis will measure their reaction. They don't want to appear to be mean-spirited, jingoistic, and being the one that blocks the peace process here. The Israelis' strength is that, well, we want to talk peace. We want to be the ones that go to the negotiating table. The Palestinians are not a partner. But if they overreact to this, then they sort of lose their moral position as well. So they've got to be a bit careful of that, and they are trying to appear that way.
What about the U.S.? Do you see the U.S. Congress taking funding away from the Palestinians if the bid is successful?
Well, there's certainly been the threat of that. I don't know what would happen. It will depend on what the Palestinians do. I think that it's very clear to everyone that this vote is going to pass by quite some significant majority. There are some European countries, the British are wobbling, but the Americans are firmly against. The Americans have got to make good on their threat, actually. I mean, you know, the State Department spokesperson came out and said, well, Congress will have to negotiate, you know, funding allocations to the Palestinians if this vote goes ahead. So the vote will go ahead. Congress presumably will then negotiate. What they negotiate depends on the severity of what the Palestinians seek to do from there on. So I think what we're looking at is a situation where, you know, the Palestinians have to be a bit careful that they don't raise American ire. But the Americans, if they cut the funding, will leave the space open for someone else to put funding in. Qatar has got plenty of money, for example. America needs to be a bit careful.
The British Foreign Secretary William Hague has called for a decisive lead from the U.S. in seeking a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Do you think this vote will increase or decrease the chances of the U.S. stepping up in a meaningful way?
I think the U.S. has to step up, really. We've had a vacuum of U.S. leadership on this issue, basically because of the presidential election. Obama didn't want to take it on, obviously, for domestic concerns. And we saw, you know, eruptions of violence that happened on the Gaza question. So I think without U.S. leadership, there's always danger that the Palestinian question is going to flare up time and time again. I think that has got to be dealt with regardless of what happens in the UN. The British are obviously seeking to draw the Americans back here, you know, in a strong progressive position, because otherwise I think they feel that, you know, there's just simply no hope for negotiated settlements. So we will see what happens, but again, you know, the core issues still remain. If the settlements are still being built, I don't see any movement forward, really.
Okay, Michael, thank you once again. Michael Stephens with the Royal United Services Institute.